Hello, my name is Chelsea Zimmerman, and I'm going to talk to some colleagues about professional development for high school's classroom in mathematics. To start off, you want to look at the main points that you need to develop your classroom policies and everything about. You need to look at the behavioral, emotional, social aspects of your students. Behavioral is the response or reaction to their environment. Social is learning the way students relate to one another, so how they, and with you also as a teacher. You want to have a good talking basis with all your students so they feel comfortable to come to you about questions or anything. Emotional is how the student reacts or responds emotionally to what you are teaching. And you want to balance all three of these so they work for you in your classroom. Alright, in a math classroom, to start off, that all three of them will be used in creating your physical classroom. One big thing, there are many ways to move your classroom around. Like if you're working in groups, you can bundle 4 together and work in groups as they're close together, and that will help develop their social skills with one another. If you are wanting a group discussion, you can make a U out of those chairs, which will make them all want to congregate and be one and talk about what's going on. And if you're just teaching a simple lesson, you can have them in lines or whatever, as long as you have to make sure that their arrangement is allowing them to see the board. You also, when you look at a physical classroom, you want to look at the temperature in your classroom, because if it's too cold, students will be worrying about getting jackets or things like that. But if it gets too hot, then some students may pass out, especially in high school mathematics, because a lot of students are not interested in it and think, oh, I don't like this class, so I'm just going to pass out, which is really bad. And then you need to look at what supplies you need to get everything across to your students. In my classroom, I recommend a whiteboard that every student is able to see where they're sitting. Calculators, which would be a good start. Whiteboard markers, and everything to make your presentation more thoroughly accepted by the students. Seating wise will be your social aspect. Your behavioral aspect will be their reaction to how they're sitting, and if one person in this group, if you sit them in groups, doesn't work out, then you'll move that one person or split the desks up. There's all different things. And emotional is like the coldness and stuff. Sometimes if it's hot, people get cranky. If it's cold, so you have to have an even balance of everything. Also lighting. If it's more bright, some students are more amped to get involved and be happier, while when it's dimmer, it could affect the students. Supplies is important because being organized for your students will help them want to be organized and follow along, because it will make it easier for them to follow along to what you are teaching. Alright, next. Ways to promote strategic learners. Okay, the way you use strategies is you have procedures and you have a set out point. So like in my classroom, we have bell work at the beginning. So all the students will be working on their bell work, but you also need techniques. It's how to implement your strategies. And when they're working on their bell work, I let them talk to one another, help each other out, figure out the answer as a whole group. And then after done with bell work, I will ask them to raise their hand, which is a technique, and I will call on them, and then they'll come up to the whiteboard, which would be strategy, because they are going to work the problem out on the board. Then after that, I would open up to the next section, which will relate back to your bell work, so they can follow along more in depth. As I open up to the next section, you could do many different ways. You can either teach straight out, just tell them what's going on and teach them how to do the process, or you can have them try to figure it out themselves. There's many different strategies on how to make your procedures and set out a plan. The one that I find really effective is when you get the students involved in what you are doing, because if you go up there and lecture, they are more amped to just fall asleep. But it is really up to you, and depending on the day, some days you might want to be more involved and get the students interested, and other days you might want them to figure it out themselves, like teach it and then have them work by themselves on problems in the classroom so you can see where their development is going. Alright, so techniques and strategies are very important. There are a lot of different strategies to be used, as I said. Techniques, everyone's going to have their own technique. Personally, I like having it orderly and stuff like that, like raising hands, sometimes coming up to the board and working on it. Sometimes I let them work together in groups, which will help them, like on bell work. I let them work together in groups and certain activities. Alright, so some activities to promote strategic learners is not every student learns the same way. So one way would be in a math class would be to work together to develop a formula. So you start the class out with some bell work about the Pythagorean theorem. Then you have the students sit there, you give them a formula, you give them the pictures on the bottom, and you say, how does this relate to the Pythagorean theorem? And say it relates to the area. How does the area of these two relate to the Pythagorean theorem? And then give half the class one of the problems, and then the other half the other square to figure out. And then let them work their minds in a different way, that they have to grasp the concept and they see how the Pythagorean theorem actually works more than just in squares. In triangles and right triangles, how that it can relate to everything. Then you can relate today's world to topics like the Pythagorean theorem. You can show them how the pyramids are built, their Pythagorean theorem, they use the Pythagorean theorem, and how the Pythagorean theorem is used in a lot of today's world, and have them work as a group to see and maybe research some ways that the Pythagorean theorem is worked in today's world. So having them work in groups on a computer that would relate to the Pythagorean theorem and searching it. Then a really cool way I learned recently is connecting different topics to mathematics. When it comes to the Pythagorean theorem, you can teach them like the history behind where the Pythagorean theorem came from. It actually came from Pythagoras, but it was used before him. It was used in Babylonian times. It was used in Egyptians, like all over the world they used the Pythagorean theorem in different ways. So you can connect history into mathematics, so those students who really love history can be like, oh, okay, and they can get more interested in your topic. Also, you can divide into different groups. Another activity is dividing into different groups, giving them the worksheet, letting them work on the worksheet, which you've already went over, or you could do something that's new and have them use the book and try to figure it out. And then at the end of the hour, see where they got and how they did it, and like go around the classroom and just help them socially bond while also like see where they're going and emotionally where they're at. Just all these activities, you just need to watch them and make sure that they are getting the concepts you are wanting. Like if I gave them a Pythagorean theorem worksheet, I wanted them to make sure that they were getting that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. In mathematics, you are going to do a lot of activities to get the students interested, because a lot of students struggle in math. So the more activities you show the students and get them involved in, socially, behaviorally, and emotionally, the more successful they will be. Some students do understand straight off, oh, this is what I'm doing. But having an activity that students can relate to, which will make their mind think in a different way, does help a lot of students understand the topic. Alright, so lastly, I put some of my sources that I did use. Also, if you go to some of these will help you understand more in depth, like classroom arrangements and some more activities you can do in a math class. That would be fun to get the students involved. There's also some other things about how to strategically get your students involved and how to give feedback, like techniques, maybe give feedback to the students and stuff like that. So I do recommend looking at these resources, and they will help you in your math class. And thank you.